The Edmonton Oilers have had a hard time beating Sergei Bobrovsky. On today's show, we're going to diagnose how to beat Bob.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. My name is Nick Zararis. Been doing hockey content almost a full decade now. I want to thank everybody who's making Locked On Oilers the first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So, today's show, very, very straightforward. Had quite a bit of fun doing the research for one of the segments on today's episode, the second segment, where we're going to talk about where teams have beaten Sergei Bobrovsky in terms of his layout, glove high, blocker high, low, 5-hole. I went back and watched every single goal the Panthers have conceded this postseason with Bobrovsky in net. Obviously, the empty netters don't count, so we'll talk about that. Opening segment, we're going to talk about player safety and referees, everyone's favorite subject, because I'm tired. I am very tired, friends. I think we are reaching, I don't want to call it a breaking point, but I think the Panthers having the success they're having with the style they are merits a conversation. And then third segment, we're going to talk about what the Oilers can do stylistically to mitigate some of what Florida does well based on what we talk about in the second segment where we beat Bob. So I'm kind of surprised some of the rulings. I expected more than just Sam Carrick to get fined for spearing. I expected fines. I thought there was no world in which the NHL was going to suspend Leon Draisaitl, one of the 5 best players in the world, in a Stanley Cup final. As much as we want to pretend, as I should modify that and amend that statement. As much as the NHL would like to pretend that its Department of Player Safety is impartial, it's not. The Department of Player Safety is an extension of the league office. It's an extension of Gary Bettman. It's an extension of the owners. This is always going to be my position on anything related to the NHL that we, the public, view as a problem. If the owners wanted it out of the game like that, you saw it earlier this year when the NHL Players Association at the All-Star Game said, the situation in Arizona is untenable. We cannot continue to do this. Bill Daley, Gary Bettman, they sat down with the Morello family and said, here's what we're going to do. And within 2 weeks, we had a Utah hockey team and we had the conditions for the Morello family to reactivate the Arizona franchise within a 5-year period. That's all subject to owner approval. The the owners, if they want something, they can make it happen like that. I don't want to snap too much because onomatopoeia is kind of annoying in your ear when you're listening to a podcast, but at some point, we need to recognize that these problems that we care about, look at the cap-friendly situation, which is egregious that the NHL is viewing that as, oh, well, this is one less problem for us. We don't want the numbers out there. We don't want the public to know how much people are getting paid. Absolutely mind-bogglingly stupid from the NHL. The NHL is not worried about growth. It is worried about each owner trying to get a little more of the pie. As opposed to making the overall pot of revenues bigger, the owners are more concerned with getting a bigger piece of the existing pot. It's why we exist in what's been a flat cap market for the last couple of years. It's why the players are consistently getting the shaft in all of these deals. Why just getting in an international tournament, like, the Four Nations Cup, and then going back to the Olympics, that took real concessions from the Players Association to make that happen. And we exist in a world where the league and the owners, they want the players to do it themselves. And I don't think what Draisaitl did to Barkov was right. I don't. He left his feet. He hit him in the head. He stays on his feet. It's an unfortunate hit, but he probably gets away scot-free. He left his feet. He was frustrated. He was getting fed up with Florida taking runs at people. I understand. You are a competitor in the heat of the moment. You are watching the other team take liberties with your teammates that you've been through fire with, and you are being told by the referees, well, we don't want to decide the game, so, and that inherently favors Florida. I think you are watching in real time a lot of the national media that cover the league, not care. They like this. They like the guys taking runs at each other. They like seeing people get their heads taken off. Because if they didn't, they would be voraciously pounding the desk that Department of Player Safety needs to do something. No, it is the fan and it is the content creator that wants to see the players protected. You can't tell me the owners care about player safety when this is the state of the game. I knew without a shadow of a doubt there was no chance Leon Draisaitl was going to get suspended for his hit on Barkov. Should he have? I think there's an argument he probably should have, but he didn't. I think there's an argument that Sam Bennett has done at least 3, if not 4, suspendable things in these playoffs. I don't think he's been fined yet. I do not understand how we exist in a world where the owners, and by extension, Gary Bettman, Bill Daley in the league, like this. You are running the risk of one of your marquee players getting their head taken clean off. Sasha Barkov is one of your marquee players, and he got his head taken off. You don't know if he's going to play in Game 3. If your star players are not available, that is a problem for your league. The NBA cares so much about this that they instituted rules for All-Star and awards based on how many games you play. That if you sit out too many games, you're not eligible for certain honors. The NHL never wants to be the NBA. The NHL sticks its nose up at the NBA that we're better than them, and the NHL has lost all of the ground it had once had. The NHL used to be more popular in the United States than basketball. Yeah, it was the late 80s, early 90s, but it happened. And then Gary Bettman got in charge, and we had 2 lockouts. The players haven't gone to the Olympics since 2014. And we are now at a point where it is the Wild West out there. Someone is going to do something incredibly stupid in the game on Thursday. I would bet a good chunk of money, first 5-10 minutes of the game, someone's taking a big run at somebody to send a message for what happened to Barkov. And then someone will get suspended. Not for the initial hit or the second hit, for the retaliation to the retaliation. That'll be the hit that gets somebody suspended for a game. That makes no sense to me. How can you tell me you care about player safety if we're going to allow the players to police themselves and do it in a way that is going to cause bodily harm to someone else? And look, I'm not saying we can't have physicality in hockey. I am saying that if someone gets hurt, the league not adjudicating some type of justice is setting someone else up to get hurt in retaliation. You're not going to throw a hit on somebody just as a love tap after one of your guys got hurt. You know, I know I'm harping on the Florida perspective of this because Barkov's one of the 5-10 best players in the world, and the Draisaitl topic is real, but Florida has gotten away with a lot in these playoffs. Sam Bennett punched Marchand in the face and knocked Marchand out of several games of that series against the Bruins in the second round of the playoffs. Florida is not entitled to the benefit of the doubt. And I know the Oilers are not very popular in the court of public opinion to begin with. When you have guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, everybody's a little jealous. They don't like you because you're better than them. And then they're playing a team like Florida who's violent, who's physical. The Oilers are being called divers. They're being called soft. And then the retaliation stuff in game number 2, they're being called sore losers. They're saying they're undisciplined. Well, if I was getting my ass kicked for 120 minutes and the officials who are supposed to be there to keep everybody safe are more or less just letting it happen, I understand. And then this is the issue. This is the crux of the issue. We, the fans, want everyone to be safe. We want there to be hitting. We want physical play, but we don't want to see people throwing hits to hurt other people. When we get into that intent to injure territory, that's where things become problematic, and that's what we don't want in today's league. We are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to tackle Sergei Bobrovsky's playoffs so far, how the Oilers might go about beating him. So please be sure to stick around to this edition of Locked On Oilers. It is a great time in the sports calendar right now. Stanley Cup Finals, NBA Finals, MLB season in full swing, WNBA in full swing. Formula One was in Montreal last week. NASCAR was in Sonoma last week. And if you want to get out there and get to an event, you have got to check in with our friends at Game Time, who make it so easy to get Stanley Cup Final or NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off, with some of the best features in the industry, like all-in pricing that shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkouts, seat views where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Final tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you to everybody who's making Locked On Oilers a part of your Wednesday, whether it's first thing in the morning, on the way to school, on the way to work, on the way to the gym, or you're consuming at the end of the day on your way home to decompress, whether it's on your commute or you're just sitting around the house. Thanks for making this show part of your day. Trying to make you as informed as you can be for the Stanley Cup Final. And look, no one wants to be down 2-0 in a series. First round, second round, Stanley Cup Final. It's difficult. The simple math, you got to win 80% of the remaining possible games to win the Stanley Cup. It's not difficult. It is difficult, but it is not impossible. That's the mindset you need to have right now. We talked about it on yesterday's show. The idea, the fire's coming. We're in the fire. We have been prepared. We have been through other fires, but this one's steep. This one is a lot more difficult, and the Oilers are going to need a really quality effort from their star players, because it's not realistic to expect the Ryan McLeods, the Evander Kanes, the Corey Perrys, the Warren Fogels. It's not fair to ask those guys to make something special happen, to do something outside of their norm. The Oilers are going to have to rely on McDavid, on Draisaitl, on Hyman, on Nugent-Hopkins, on Bouchard, on Ekholm, on their 6 guys. You know, the Oilers' top 6 guys have been amongst the, 10, 15 best players in the entire postseason. If they are going to find a way to beat Florida, they are going to need those guys to make something special happen. And that's unfair that your expectation of a player is that they do something special, because by definition, something special is rare. It's difficult to do, but they have the facilities, they have the talent. And, that's the burden. We talked about that going into this series, the idea of the burden of greatness, that Connor McDavid shouldering that responsibility to be the next great one, to assume the mantle right there with Sid, with Gretzky, with Lemieux. I think he's already there, but the old heads will refuse to do that until he wins anything. So the Oilers' big qualm in this series so far has been scoring. They have struggled. They've only have 1 goal through 2 games. They didn't generate a lot of quality offense against Florida in game number 2. Natural stat trick had them at 1 high danger chance for the entire game. They struggled to maintain zone time. They struggled to cycle. They struggled to forecheck. I had talked about it on yesterday's show, but took them like 8 passes to set up 1 scoring chance on the power play they had late in that game. And Florida is a very good team. Florida is a quality defensive opponent that really they've identified the important traits of the modern NHL defenseman. They need to be able to skate, and they need to be able to move the puck. They have guys of varying size. Nico Mikkola is a lot bigger than Brandon Montour or Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They have a few different types of skill sets. Mikkola, more of a puck retriever, physical, can win some battles, block shots. And then you got the prototypical modern new age defenseman in Ekman Larson, who, though he's old, he's still a decent skater and can move the puck pretty well. So how do you beat Bobrovsky? I went back and watched every single goal the Panthers have conceded these playoffs. And I fact checked to be sure. I wanted to make sure all the math added up. The Panthers have conceded 39 goals. They played 5 games in round 1. They played 6 games in round 2, so that's 11. They played 6 in round 3, that's 17, and they have played 2 so far in the Stanley Cup Final. They have played a grand total of 5, 11, 17, 19. They have played 19 games in these playoffs. They have conceded 39 goals with Bobrovsky in net. There were some empty netters in there, but we're not counting those because we're talking about strictly Bobrovsky. The thing that jumps out to me about watching the tape, watching what's beaten Bobrovsky in these playoffs, he is vulnerable high. It's weird because he's a tall goalie. He's got long legs. He's really got the lower half of the net locked down. So you got to get the puck up on him. And you would think tall guy, long arms, but that's where you can beat Bob, is up high. The most common area he's been beat these playoffs is blocker low side. So the side he holds his stick, he's conceded 12 goals low. I quantified low as below shoulder. So he doesn't have to raise his arm. He has to dip his arm. So you got 12 blocker low. You got 10 blocker high, so shoulder or above, where he has to move up and down. 2 5-hole, 4 on his glove side low, and then 11 on his glove high. That tells me a few things. It means the Oilers are going to need more sustained zone time, or they're going to need to generate more high danger chances. One of those two. Those two things are not necessarily aligned with each other. You don't necessarily need just because you have more zone time doesn't necessarily mean you'll make more high danger offense. But the two consistent ways Bob has been beaten in these playoffs are off of the rush, where it's just the shooter and him, or a tap in, but tap ins are a little bit different. Off the rush, and then when he's had to make that high save, when he's had to make a quick reaction to a hard shot that's high. The key to that is having good positioning. If you want to score high, you typically need to have your feet set. You typically need to have room, unless you're bearing down on the net and you're going to be able to get that puck up because you're on a breakaway. You're going to have to be in a really good sedentary position to make a good scoring chance happen against Bobrovsky. You're probably going to need to elevate the puck on him. And look, it's a lot easier said than done to elevate the puck when you have people bearing down on you. You know, McDavid had that scoring chance on the breakaway where Tkachuk was kind of hooking him from behind, but they let it go. It's a lot easier said than done to elevate that puck. But you go back and watch the Rangers series. The Rangers were really only scoring against Florida on the rush, where they would have the zone with speed fast. They would get Bobrovsky moving left to right, and it would usually be only one defenseman. The defenseman would have to choose, am I playing pass or am I playing shot? And then they'd be able to make something happen. They beat Bob up high quite a few times. Gaudreau did it twice. Lafreniere did it twice. Trocheck, I believe, did it twice. And no, Trocheck did it once. Panarin did it once. You go to that Boston series. A lot of scoring in bunches in that Boston series against Bobrovsky. Boston did have a game where they potted 5 on him early. That was game 1. If you want to beat Bob, you're going to have to find ways to elevate the puck. And that typically means breakaways, which are kind of hard to facilitate, in all honesty, because that's incumbent upon Florida making a mistake. Or you're going to have to really be established in your position so that you have time to aim, set, and shoot. And look, I just said that slower than the time it would take for a player to do that. They know that. They have to do it instinctually. If they have to think cognitively, I have the puck, wind up, shoot, that's way too long. The Oilers need to elevate the puck on Bob. They need to do a better job of getting Bob out of position. He hasn't conceded a lot of tip-ins, a lot of jams, a lot of screens. He's only really been screened on a goal like 3 times of the 39, and like full screens. Like most of them, He's seen it's hard to beat Bob low to the middle. It's hard to beat him 5-hole. You got to get traffic. You got to establish the zone. And then when the breakaways are there, you got to try and make them happen. Coming up next, we are going to talk all about how the Oilers can facilitate some more offense. Coming up next on Locked On Oilers, your team every day. So stick around. In these uncertain times, peace of mind goes a long way. Insurance can give you and your family the you need to feel comfortable. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online, let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you easily compare your options to compare all of America's top insurers with just a few clicks. Their award-winning staff can even walk you through the process step by step. Your work-life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even when you change jobs, it might not come with you. Policygenius has no incentive to recommend one policy over the other, so you can trust their guidance. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the policy they needed. Get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance policy with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com, click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Thank you to everybody listening to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. And third segment yesterday was more me trying to psych you up. You know, I gave you the Teddy Atlas. I had to look it up because I remember seeing it. I could picture the boxer and I could picture the trainer's face. The trainer's name is Teddy Atlas, really one of the best boxing trainers of all time. But we are firemen. The fire's coming. We're ready. We train for this. We've been in the fire before. We know what it takes to go the distance. The Oilers have been in the fire this year. They might not have been in a fire this big, but they've been in some fires. They know how to dig themselves out of holes. This is about as steep as hole as you're going to find in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Florida is a really good team. They have really good players, and their style is both frustrating and effective. You are not going to be able to win a battle of will. Florida is playing, I don't want to call it prison rules because that's a little over the top, but Florida is doing everything they can within the binds of the rule book. And even if they're going over the line a little bit, it's not like the referees are checking them on it. We just, in a time like we spent a lot of that first segment, the referees don't care. They don't care if anyone gets hurt. They are there to manage the game. So, from an Oilers perspective, you need to take the juice you're going to have coming into this game 3. You got the extra day off. The NHL was nice because they realize how far the travel is. Got an extra day off in there. You are going to have a crowd juiced to the gills with energy. That crowd is also going to be very nervous. I was looking earlier at tickets on Game Time, and it is a pretty penny to get in the door. Oiler fans are dedicated. Oiler fans are passionate. It is really expensive to go to a game. The people in that building are going to want to feel like they spent their money wisely. They need to get the game going and give themselves a chance. And I'm not a person who believes a whole lot in getting the crowd into the game. I think that's good for a sugar high. That can be effective for once or twice in the period in a game. But by and large, it's going to be on the guys on the ice to make it happen. Sure, can a rowdy crowd help? Of course. It's not the difference between winning and losing in the National Hockey League. Let's be for real here. For Edmonton, it's real simple. Pucks on net, traffic in front, and deal with the adversity. Florida is going to goad you. They are going to take a run at somebody in the first 10 minutes of the game on Thursday. I guarantee you are going to see someone take a run at someone on the Oilers from Florida's side to get their lick back for Barkov getting hurt. It's going to happen. The Oilers need to have their heads on a swivel, and they need to match that energy with effective play. Florida starts to get in your head with the physical, the imposing stuff. And then you start getting involved after the whistle and you take a dumb penalty that should have given you a power play, but instead it's 4-on-4. It's frustrating. It's agonizing. And coming into this series, I had no real qualms with the Panthers. They're a really good team. They're starting to get on my nerves. I can't pretend that it's that it's an amusing act. The Panthers are slowly but surely becoming as insufferable as everybody else when they start to win in these games playing this way. It would be really nice if the Oilers could find a way to just shut them up for a minute. I think about Bouchard sitting on the bench just telling Tkachuk over and over again towards the end of the game too, shut up, shut up, shut up. Because at some point you start to lose it because these people are so friggin' annoying. Florida's going to come out determined. Florida might be smelling blood at this point. If you are the Oilers, I'm going to go to the John Tortorella. This is a John Tortorella quote from back when he was coaching the Rangers like 13 years ago. When you are in a tough situation, it is one play at a time. You string together a few plays at a time, you had a good shift. You have a good shift, you make a few plays, you do that twice, you do that 3 times, you have a good period. You do that for 3 periods, you have a good game. You have a good game, more often than not, you're going to win. You have good games more often than bad games, you're going to win the series. The Oilers right now, it is down to the granular level. It is one good puck touch at a time. String a couple of those together, make some good plays, string together some good shifts, get your feet under you, and then you can start to prosecute your agenda. You start putting heat on Bobrovsky, you start making a move left to right, you elevate the puck on him like we talked about in the last segment, make him raise his arms, then you start getting him out of sorts, he starts having respect up and down, and then you're in business. That's a lot easier said than done, but if anyone's going to be able to do it, it's the team with Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman. Those are 3 of the 35, 40 best players in the entire world. When we talk about Hyman, when we're talking about McDavid and Draisaitl, those are probably 2 of the 5 best players in the world. The Oilers are totally capable of doing this. It is a matter of them going out and doing it. That will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, drop the show a 5-star review, please. If you are watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell, get a notification whenever a new episode goes live. Leave a comment. Who do you think is going to throw the stupid hit on the Panthers to try and injure someone on the Oilers? I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.